Thank you so much for stopping in to my first YouTube video. I am Jeremy Ellsworth with Jeremy Ellsworth Photography, and I am excited that you're here, and I'm excited to share with you the knowledge that I have about portrait photography on this channel. The video today is going to be a walkthrough of portrait retouch for a fashion shoot that I did with an amazing model named Ashley Haverman. I use the Totally Rad Action Set Pro Retouch 2.0 in my retouching process, so you're going to hear me talk about that. It's about a 25-minute video, give or take. So if you're interested in the process and seeing how I go about things and I talk through my thought process and all of it, stick around. I would greatly appreciate it if you liked and shared and subscribed and all those things that YouTubers tell you to do, because this is a brand new channel and I want to help people. In the meantime, thank you again. Keep being awesome. Check out the All right, so we're just jumping in. I'm going to walk through this retouching that I did on a portrait of the amazing Ashley Haverman. I use Totally Rad Actions, the Pro Retouch 2.0 for all of my retouching needs. The first thing I always do is go in and use the cloning and healing brush to clean up blemishes, stray hairs, things like that. So that's what you're going to see first. Just a quick run through. The Totally Rad Actions are amazing. I am not paid by them. I am not promoted by them, but I love their product. So highly recommend it. Super simple to use, and I use it on every retouching job that I have. So you'll see here that I'm taking care of blemishes. I will momentarily go in and add another layer to go ahead and take care of stray hairs. I try to be super precise and clean up as much as I can, even things that probably don't matter in the grand scheme of things. I'm going to try and take care of them. You'll see here I'm trying to figure out a way to approach the hair there between her hand and the majority of her hair, the stuff that's on her neck. So you see I set a new layer to go ahead and take care of strays. That way if I did mess up somehow, I'm not affecting all of the work I just did on the cleaning up of the blemishes or minor things that I just felt like I needed to take care of. It takes time. That's a big thing about retouching. I mean, this retouching job took me about 25 minutes, give or take. And that's not terribly long. Some do more, some do less. But you have to be patient. You have to be willing to put the time and the effort in to go in and pay attention to those minute details. One thing with being a portrait photographer, if you're going to do your own retouching, is your willingness to spend time in front of your computer. We probably spend more time in front of our computers than we do behind our cameras. But we'll get to lighting videos later on this channel that will help make our retouching job easier by lighting things appropriately. So there I'm using the patch tool. I don't always just use the clone stamp or the healing brush. I'll go in, I'll use the patch tool, I'll move some larger pieces around. What I'm doing here is healing up the discoloration that happened when I used the healing brush to take care of the hair. So that's what I'm working on, cleaning up right there. A mess I made, because I want to try and get those tones as even as possible. Still just working on hair. We'll probably speed up through some of this just because you don't necessarily need to see me take care of every strand of hair. Back to the patch tool, and you can see there again that I am moving that patch tool around and trying to blend in the discoloration from where I used the healing brush. It made the skin a little blotchy, and that was me cleaning up my own mess again. Healing brush, go back to get some more hairs cleaned up. I do tend to go through on the hair and not only clean up stuff that's flyaways outside the hairline of the image, but also ones that I feel like are a distraction on her head or on the subject's head. Sometimes the light will catch one or two hairs, and I feel like, okay, that's a distraction if I'm looking at this image. And I'm getting drawn to those single flyaways. I'm going to clean those up. And while we're watching these single hair cleanups, I want to say thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching my video. This is my first one, and I hope they help you. I hope it continues to help you grow in your craft and create amazing portraits and amazing artwork that inspires others and feeds your soul, because that's what this is about. It's about helping portrait photographers become better portrait photographers, not just for paying clients. It'll help there as well, but also to help you feel like you are doing what you love and really succeeding at that. So thanks for being here and for watching. I appreciate you. So again, this takes time. We're cleaning up little hairs here and there, trying to make sure we have a decent line and not a bunch of flyaways. Here in a second, you're going to see me pull out the clone stamp and fill in that spot on her shoulder where there's a separation in the hair. I'm going to clone that and fill it all in. But you can see I'm constantly going back and forth between the patch tool and the healing brush to try and get even skin tones and even color where I've done retouching. And sometimes I don't like it. Sometimes I'll have to undo multiple steps because I thought I could take care of it and it didn't work the way I wanted. And the healing brush can be tricky when you're working along a hairline. Photoshop's amazing at what its brain can figure out, but sometimes it does pull in color from the hair when you're using the healing brush, and then you have to try and clean up the spot you just healed. There you see I'm taking care of that hair on top of her head that I was talking about earlier, where I feel like the light is a distraction on those little strands of hair, and the image is going to have more impact and look better if I can clean those up. And it's tricky working in there with those little areas where you have a lot of things in the background. I decided to make a new layer just then, so again, I didn't screw up all the work I did before that. I'm making my brush hard here so I can work in this smaller space, and I'm using the clone stamp to go in and take care of that little patch of hair there. It's going to give me a cleaner line, cleaner edge, but I can work around that gold leaf as well, and then just kind of free that space up and make it prettier. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking around. I appreciate you. I know we're 10 minutes in, maybe. I guess it depends on if I fast forwarded or not in the video. But I appreciate you sticking around and watching. If you have questions along the way, feel free to put them in the comments. I am an open book, and I will help how I can answer any questions. So here's what I was talking about earlier. I'm going to go ahead and take that clone stamp. I think I initially tried to clean up those hairs and thought, nah, So I take the clone stamp and I'm just going to paint right over that whole spot. Fill it in. Because the color is so dark, you can't tell. And it balances the image better. That space on her shoulder is not distracting. Alright, so moving on from cloning and healing, this is where I use the foundation, the strong foundation brush from Totally Rad Pro Retouch 2.0. And this is going to help me smooth out the surface of the skin. It does an amazing job. It typically starts out, I think they have it programmed to set out at like 80% opacity. How do you say that word? Opacity? Anyway, typically I'll go in and make sure that I use it at that full level, however it starts up, and then I'll go in and lower the opacity if I need to, in order to bring some of the skin texture back, because I hate plastic. I don't want people to look fake. I want them to look good and amazing and the best them they could be, but I don't ever want to try and make somebody look plastic. That is not professional. It's not okay. You know, we want to make it magazine worthy, not meme worthy. But I will go through. I'll go over and use that brush on anywhere there's visible skin, just to try and even out the gradients of the shadows. It blends everything together. It is a layer mask, so you do have the ability to, if you went over a spot you didn't want to go over, you just flip the color back over from white to black, and fill in the spots you didn't want to go over. And that's what I'm doing here on her fingernails and in her nostrils. Just making eyebrows, just making sure that those are not smoothed out with that brush. And so you can see the before and after there. And I'm lowering the opacity, like I said. It starts out at 80. I'm bringing it down to about 50, I think. Maybe 60. My eyes don't work that well when I'm looking at my screen. Next step, eye pop. I'm going to make her eyes pop. That's pretty self-explanatory. We just lighten things up, give it a little bit of shine, and make them a little bolder. We all know everybody, the eyes are the focus of a portrait, typically. And we all want to make those the focus and make them bright and shiny, and that's what that does. Next step, we're making the lashes, her eyelashes a little bolder with the next brush. It just fills it in. And I use it on the top and the bottom. I think that's personal preference. Everybody can do what they want to do as far as how they do that. Next, we're going to make her lips a little glossier. I don't tend to use this at full strength either, just because I think it is too bright. So I'll apply it and then I will lower the opacity on it as well. But it just gives a nice gloss look, fills things out. And when you're doing beauty retouching or glamour retouching, those are obviously all things that stand out. But you can see there I'm lowering the opacity because I was like, okay, that's way too bright. Too bright. So far we've done blemishes and flyaways, surface retouching of the skin, eye pop, eyelashes, and lips. Looks like I found something else I wanted to clean up. So I went back to my healing layer, clone healing layer, making sure my brush is at the setting I want it at. Yeah, it looks like it's a hard brush because I want to go ahead and clean up that little stray hair there on her right shoulder. So I'm making the brush a little bit softer, it looks like. I didn't want it as hard. Alright, so what I just did there, I grouped all of the layers I already had, and then I basically merged them into a new layer, so I wasn't, again, messing up anything I had previously done. One of the things you're going to learn quickly in Photoshop is that layers are your friends, and the more you have, although it's a bigger file when all is said and done, the happier you will be if you mess something up. Facts, straight facts. Layers are your friends. Don't be afraid to add them, and delete them if you need to, because you feel like you messed something up or what you did didn't work. What you've done so far is saved in other layers underneath. So I went through, I cleaned up that hair with both the healing brush and the clone stamp, and in a moment I'm sure I will use the patch tool to even out those skin tones. See? Again, retouching is a lesson in patience and perseverance and creating a final piece of art that you're proud of. Not that you can't be proud of the original, because I loved these portraits straight out of the camera, but retouching allows us to really make our work shine in a way that typically straight out of the camera images don't, no matter how skilled you are. You can see I'm struggling with that little piece right there by the hairline. It's either too light or too much pull in the color of the hair with the healing brush. So I'm figuring out the best way to approach that in order to take care of it. And it looks like I'm going back and forth between the clone stamp and the healing brush to clean up those little bits of hair. And then I'm sure I'll go back to the patch tool, because that's the way I do things. I do try and take on the hair there that's in her armpit, and I did not like the way it turned out. So you'll see me try. It looks horrible. I undo my process and figure out a new way to do it and a new approach. See, it looks too discolored. I'm like, I don't want to make her armpit look dark and funky. So I'm pretty sure I did quite a bit here, and then I was like, okay, this isn't it. Yeah, look how dark and funky that looks. It looks like she was, yeah. So I'm undoing everything right there. All the Control Z's or Command Z's. And I figured out a new plan of attack. I was like, I'll go in with the healing brush. We'll take care of it this way and see what we can do with the healing brush and the patch tool. I think I was getting impatient with the process at this point, and I wanted to speed things up, and that's when I didn't like my outcome, so I started over on that area of the image. In a perfect world, I would have taken these hairs on before I did the foundation retouching, just because colors tend to get, the tones tend to get faded and messed up. It kind of all bleeds together after you do the retouching. That's why I combined all my layers to start a new one, because I didn't like the way the skin was looking. You know, retouching again is one of those things that you're an artist, and everybody's going to approach things differently and do things in their own way. You know, it's to your liking. Obviously, if you're doing this as a commercial thing, it's going to be to your client's liking. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to add, I love dark and moody images, so I'm going to add a vignette around the outside of her here. So I use my lasso tool, invert it, go over to adjustments, it makes a mask, and then I can just bring down my adjustment layer and darken things up a little bit. And I honestly do that on almost every portrait, especially every studio portrait I do. I like that dark, edgy, bold look. It's part of my style. So you're going to see that just about every time. Sometimes I'll do a little bump of contrast. You can do that with the adjustment tools, or you can, there's an action that I use for it. Then I'm going to go by my layers, and I created a sharpening action that I use at the end of all my images. Sharpen Like a Boss is what I named it, and it's gonna just fine-tune how the image looks at the end. Oh, I'm skipping a step. I skipped ahead. What I'm doing here, again, I talked about the mood and dark images. So I'm using what Pro Retouch 2.0 has an action called Portrait Yin Yang, and it allows you basically to bring up the highlights or increase the shadows with a brush. So I go over and I go heavy. I bring it really dark. Even if a flow of 10% or 15% on my brush, you can see how dark that is, and it looks horrible. But I do that intentionally. I'm like, let's bring it all as dark as we can, and then we can adjust the layer, the opacity of the layer, opacity. There we are again. I don't know how to say that word. But I go through and I'm just filling in all the areas that I want the shadows to stand out a little bit more, and kind of give the image more dimension. And then you'll see I go over to the opacity tool and lower that down, way down, to where it looks realistic and not like I drew on her with a marker in Photoshop. And you can see the difference here, just on and off. It's just a slight bump in the shadows, gives it a little more depth. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to actually enhance the Rembrandt light on her cheek there. Initially I put it on the finger too, but I'll go back and correct that in a second. I didn't like the way it looked. But I do it full blast, and then I'm going to adjust the layer opacity down so that it's not as bright, and just gives us a little more of the illusion of that perfect Rembrandt triangle under her eye. We just play with it until we like it. So you can see it there, just off and on, just a little bit of light on her cheek. I'm showing again the off and on there, and again I didn't like it on her finger, so I go back in, and I fill the mask back in. I'm like, okay, I didn't like it on her finger, let's take care of the light there. We're just about done. Messing with the opacity again on that level, or on that layer. Group it all together, off and on, so you can see beginning, end, before, after. And now I'm going to run my sharpening action. Sharpen like a boss. It's what I feel like it's subtle enough and fine enough that it just gives it that little bit of perfect sharpness, in my opinion. Zoom it in so you guys can see here. It's on, it's off. So you can see it's very slight, but it brings back some of the texture in the skin and really just makes it what I feel is a final quality image. So I'm going to group it all back together, show you the before and after. And that, my friends, is a full portrait retouch with an up-close portrait. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching until the end. If you have any questions at all, please put them in the comments. I will put some links in to take you over to the Totally Rad Actions if that's something you're interested in investing in. Definitely a worthwhile investment in my opinion. Again, would love it if you liked this video, if you subscribed to my channel, and if you shared it with your friends who might be interested in the thought process of a portrait retoucher and portrait photographer. This channel is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to learn a lot of things. Not every video will be this long, I promise you that. And again, you are amazing. Believe in yourself. You too can be an awesome portrait photographer.